Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Mike from MOBOXgraphics.com, and in this video tutorial, we're going to be going over how to do this kind of cinematic camera movement in After Effects. You get really nice kind of depth of field blur. It's a really nice way to illustrate something on screen, whether it be video or photo, or in this case a web page. Something a little bit more interesting than just kind of plastering it on screen and not highlighting anything in particular. I think this is a great effect. You see it a lot of times in like documentaries or short films, but it's a very simple effect to do. So let's just go ahead and jump into After Effects and show you how it's done. So you can see this is kind of the sample that I was showing, but I did add a vignette, which I will show you how to add. But I'm just going to start by creating a new composition new, and I'm going to make it 2560 by 1440. 30 seconds or 30 frames per second is fine. Duration 10 seconds is fine. So I'm just going to hit OK. And I am just going to go into my accessories file, and I'm just going to drag in my video here. So this is my video that I used. You can see here that I got the little recording thing up in the corner, and I want to get rid of that. So I'm just going to drag this over until it's gone. So that way I get the portion of the clip that I want to show. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a 3D layer. Now, I'm going to show you two techniques, and it doesn't really matter which way you do it, but one technique is just showing this as a frame, and the other technique is kind of making it seem like the whole page is there. It's kind of hard to, I'm probably just confusing you more than I probably should, so I'm just going to shut up. So, okay, so now I need to add a camera. So layer, new, camera. So the preset set to 35mm, you can set it to custom. I noticed that you don't want to change this later, so pick the one that you want. Each will give a little bit of a different effect. I'm just going to leave it on 35mm. I think that that's fine for me. And open this up, camera options, and yours will probably be turned off, but you want to make sure that the depth of field is turned on. So when it's turned off, you will not get any depth of field, but when you turn it on, basically what it does is, I'm going to go to two views. This here is your focus is your focal length, your focal distance here. So you can see that as the focal distance, so this is my image, this is my focal distance. As my focal distance approaches the image gets clear. But if my focal distance is closer, then you'll see that it starts to get kind of blurry, which it's starting to get blurry. And then if it's really far away, then it may get blurry also. But in this case, I'm just going to bring it back to somewhere. It's kind of far, it's crazy. There it goes. But I'm going to mess with this focal distance because that's how I'm going to kind of drag the depth of field across the image. So it doesn't really matter where it is right now. I'm just going to leave it right there. But that's just kind of a heads up as to how we'll kind of get that depth of field to kind of move across the image. So next up, I'm going to rename this to just clip. And I'm going to hit R on the keyboard and set some keyframes. I'm going to hit P on the keyboard, set a keyframe. I'm going to hit S on the keyboard to set a keyframe. And basically, if I hit U on the keyboard, I can see all the keyframes that I set. So I set position, scale, X, Y, and Z rotation. So this is where you can kind of be creative as to kind of which perspective you want. Because if, you could just see there that this is kind of how you adjust the perspective. So the way your settings will vary, but I'm going to set mine to, let's say X is going to be 13, Y is going to be -20, and Z I'm going to set to leave it 0. And then for my scale, I'm going to increase it to maybe, or decrease it down to like maybe 85%, and then change the position to maybe 1600 by 760 by -320. And this might not be exactly what I want, but I'm just kind of basing this off of what I did before. I know that these values are kind of something that I liked, but your values could be completely different. So what I noticed here is that I think I want this to be a little bit more this way and a little bit closer to the screen. And I think I want my rotation to be a little bit more extreme, like that. kind of something like that. And then at 10 seconds, I'm going to scale this maybe down to like 78, have my X rotation go to like, so oftentimes if this is positive, I want it to go then negative, so maybe -3. And since this is -24, maybe I'll reduce that maybe to negative like 17. And you can just kind of see what kind of effect we're going for here. So I'm just gonna play this. I'm gonna reduce the resolution to half. So you can see what kind of effect we're getting now. Maybe adjust the position a little bit more. Maybe make the rotation a little bit more extreme. Maybe that's a little too extreme. Kind of like that level of rotation. So I'm just going to set some keyframes and drag these over. So I actually don't need a Z keyframe. I chose not to use Z, so I'm just going to uncheck that. I could have used, if I hit R on this, I could have changed the orientation, but I prefer to kind of see X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to hit U on the keyboard. And now I'm going to add some smoothing using the tool by Mount MoGraph. That's weird. I didn't actually change the position at all. But now I'm going to add some smoothing using a tool by Mount MoGraph. And it's called Motion V2. It's a plugin, totally worth it. But I'll show you kind of what the graph looks like. It just looks something kind of like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding some depth of field. So I'm going to open this up, go to camera options, depth of field is turned on, which is great. And now I'm going to increase the aperture and I'm going to increase the blur level. So you can see here that if I increase the aperture and the blur percentage, you kind of get slightly different effects in the way the blur looks. You just kind of have to adjust it because sometimes the blur could look pretty artificial. So that looks a little bit artificial. So I just want to maybe bring that down. Maybe just bring the blur percentage up. But basically from here, I could set a keyframe for focal distance. So I'm going to bring this down and I want the focal distance to first be kind of on this name. I'm going to set a keyframe. And I'm going to go to the end and I want the focal distance to kind of be down here. And I think I'm going to increase the aperture and I'm going to increase the blur level just a little bit more. And I'm going to change this from fast rectangle to maybe dodecahedron. I think that it's going to slow down my animation a little bit. But let's see. So you can see that my blur looks a little bit more realistic when I change this to change the iris shape. So let's hit play. So one thing I noticed is I'm not really getting a lot of blur up here towards the end. So the reason is that the difference between this and this with respect to where the camera is very low. So if I actually kind of rotate this a little bit, I may be able to further kind of push that away from the camera. But it doesn't look like that added too much more. So I'm just going to Control Z that out. But basically, depending on your movement, depends on of course how far away each corner is to the camera, and how far something is from the camera will relate to how much blur you get. So a way around this is, of course, I could just increase the amount of blur, which would then increase that. But then maybe in the beginning here, you can see it's just way too blurry. So a solution is I can set a keyframe for the blur amount and then increase it slightly. But basically this is just utilizing the camera tool to add a nice blur effect on a moving object. So I'm going to reduce this down to 3/4 just so it renders a little bit faster. We can kind of see what's going on. So it's nice, the blur's coming down. Now this is now my main focus. You can see that this is all still in focus, this is in focus, and slowly but surely this is gaining focus, and this is becoming unfocused. So I really like that because the focus range is sliding across the image, which gives a really nice effect. I think that looks great. So the next thing that you would want to do obviously is create a background. So you can go Layer, New, Solid, and you can set your background to be black, or you can set it to be white. I actually don't like doing this The reason being is it kind of looks like this pane is kind of just like floating in midair, and I don't really like that. So what I'd rather do is if I select this clip and hit Control-Shift-C and pre-comp it by leaving all attributes in Comp 1, I hit OK. Now if I open this clip, I could see here that it's just my standard clip. What this also means is I could change this image and it will change it in my Comp 1. So that's really useful. So I'm gonna increase this composition settings and I'm gonna lock aspect ratio. I'm just gonna crank this up a little bit. And I am going to basically just create a new solid, and I'm going to basically make it seem like this is expanded. So I'll show you what I mean here in a second. So this top one, I'm just going to change the color of the fill. Drag it down. And then this bottom one, I'm going to change the fill also. Now you can see I still kind of get this like line here from the scroll bar. So if I right click and go to mask, new mask, I could just select that mask, holding shift and just drag it over. Just to get rid of that bar. And also I have this like mouse pointer that I might want to get rid of. So I'm going to do this really cheaply and just create an ellipse over it. And that's pretty much it. So it's actually really simple. Now when I jump back into Comp 1, you could see there that even towards the end, before there was white here, now there's no white. So that is really nice. It makes it so that it doesn't seem like this is just floating out in space. It looks like this is actually a physical object, an entire physical object that we have in frame. Next up, the last thing I'm going to show you how to do is add that vignette. So I think there's actually a tool here to do vignette. Yeah, you could add a vignette. I'm not really sure exactly how you do it. I don't use that to create a vignette. I usually just create a layer new solid and make it black. And then I right click mask, new mask. I hit M on the keyboard. I click shape and I change it to ellipse. Hit OK. I click inverted, so it inverts the mask. And then when I open this, I could just increase the feathering by a lot. And then I could hit T on the keyboard and just bring the transparency down. So you can see you get a little bit of a vignette. So that makes it look a little bit more cinematic. Okay, so the very last thing that I'm gonna show you is how to kind of give it like kind of more of like a grainy look, almost like it's actually a computer screen. So what I'm gonna first do is add layer, new, adjustment layer, and I'm gonna search for an effect called TV. And you'll see that there's three options: TV warp, TV old, TV weak. I personally think TV old looks the best. Basically all this is just a collection of different effects, which that kind of looks like crap. So let's actually delete the color balance portion of it. And that makes it so it's less crunchy where we don't want it to be. And I'm gonna just open up the wave warp and I'm gonna decrease the wave height to maybe like 5. So that kind of gives it, you get a little bit of wave warping happening. You get those lines, which is nice. And it just overall looks like it is it's actually a screen. So another thing that I did actually also, what I didn't show you was actually hit S on the keyboard on the vignette and I just scaled it up a little bit. I found that it was a little bit too rigid around the edges. So if I scaled it up to maybe like 115 or even 120, the vignette effect was much more subtle, which I personally like. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to give this video a like, subscribe, check out other videos on this channel, and give us feedback in the comments. What kind of videos do you want to see in the future? Anyways, guys, thanks for watching.